Good morning and welcome to Rosebud Homestead, and thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you for watching this video, and we recognize that we have people from all over the world watching, and we want to welcome everyone no matter where you are, and we appreciate your joining our community and contributing in the ways that you do. Our community is really growing. We're so excited. It just makes us giddy with pleasure because it means that the word is getting out to so many people, and that's just exactly what we want, and it's because of our wonderful community. So thank you so much. I have been practicing a lot on the recipes that my sister Cindy and I are going to be putting into our book on food storage and the recipes and how to stretch it out for a whole year, how to plan for a whole year's worth of food storage. One of the recipes in that she is putting in and one that I am putting in calls for tortillas in a grid down situation. We're going to have to make our own or substitute with something else. Well, I spent a lot of years in El Paso when my children were young, and I learned from some lovely Mexican women who belonged to our church how to do tortillas. And it was so much fun. I do not pretend to be a native tortilla maker, but I have learned some skills and I'm going to pass those on to you. It's been years since I have made tortillas and I had forgotten how much fun it is. So we're going to get started with that fun when we come right back. In order to make tortillas, you have to have some things that if you're going to do this in a grid down situation or long term for a year's supply of food, you're going to need to have some masa, which is right here, in your food storage. And we have just bought some to put in our food storage. And so it comes in 5-pound bags that look similar to this. And the thing that you want to look for, it should say instant corn masa flour. Instant corn masa flour. And this is made from not dried corn, but corn that has been cooked and then turned into flour. And so this is the basic ingredient. You're also going to need water and just a little bit of salt. So those are the ingredients. Now, in terms of equipment, you are going to need some kind of a pan. Now, today I'm going to be using my griddle, my electric griddle. But in a grid down situation, you could use a cast iron fry pan on whatever cooking heat source, either over coals or a campfire or a propane stove or a butane stove, anything, because the cooking of the tortillas needs to be done on a very, very hot surface. And then I have a tortilla press, and that's this little contraption right here, and they are really nice. I just bought a new one, and as you can see, I have practiced with it a little bit. I broke probably 3 of these in my early years when I was making tortillas a lot. They were not made as sturdily as this one appears to be. You do not have to have a tortilla press. I'm going to show you an alternative. And then you need some kind of a plastic or a parchment paper barrier, and we're going to be cutting this quart-sized plastic bag because you need to have a barrier on the top and on the bottom when you press the tortillas. Otherwise, it's going to stick to everything. So I'll show you some alternatives there. So here is how you get started, and it is as easy as can be. So I'm wanting to make about 8 tortillas. We're also going to show you how we can turn those tortillas into tortilla chips, because some of our recipes in our cookbook also call for tortilla chips. So this is about a cup of the masa, and I'm not going to measure exactly accurate because this is a feel type of a thing, and you can get about 8 tortillas out of a cup. So you can see right here that it is flour. It has a little bit of a different consistency. This is completely gluten-free. All right, now that we have our cup of, about our cup of flour in here, I'm going to put just a tiny bit of salt. Like it is less than it's about 1/8 of a teaspoon. It's just kind of a pinch. And I'm just going to sprinkle that over the top and then just mix that together. And the next step is to add the water. I'm going to fill this cup with water, with warm water, actually hot water. You know, I have tried boiling water, I've tried cold water, I've tried just warm tap water, and warm tap water seems to do the very best. So that's what I'm going to use. Now I'm going to fill the cup with water, but I may not be using all the water because just like in bread making, tortilla making, you go by the feel. So I'm going to put probably about, I'm going to say 3/4 of a cup in there. And I'm leaving some in the cup so that I have some more to work with if needed. And then I'm just going to work this with my fingers. And I can tell right away it's way too dry. Do you see how quickly the masa absorbed all of that water? So I'm going to put in about half of what I had left in the container. And what we want is a nice, soft, and pliable dough. And you have to work this a little bit because it is deceiving. You think it's really dry, but you'll be able to tell with your fingers that it is quite soft. It's kind of what we're wanting is the texture of Play-Doh. And it's still just a little bit dry, so I'm going to probably add, I have just a few drops left in that cup. And we're wanting this to pick up all of the masa. All the flour needs to be in here. We don't want to waste even one little drop. So when it starts picking up everything, that's a really good sign. So the bowl is now fairly clean, and I have this nice smooth ball, this lump of dough. Okay, I'm going to put it back in the bowl. And I have this damp tea towel, and I'm just going to put that damp tea towel over it. Now this step of letting it sit here, we're going to let it sit for about 20 minutes, between 20 and 30 minutes. This is a really important step. Some folks don't do this step, but I can tell you it makes a difference in the finished product if you allow it to sit. And what is going to happen is during this time, the water is going to completely absorb that flour, and it is going to become much more pliable, more flexible, more malleable. So we'll be back in about 20 minutes when we will continue then with making these tortillas. Now for the fun part, we have let our dough rest for 20 minutes. And I'm just going to shape it into this brick. And I'm going to cut it in half this way, and in half again and again, and then right down the middle. And then each of these is about 1 ounce, and I'm just going to form it into a ball. Smaller than a golf ball, larger than a marble. And we open up this is hot, I've been preheating it. We open up the press. These little papers came with the press. I've used them a couple of times just because I'm so cheap. They're supposed to be used once, and I flatten this just a little bit. And then put another one on the top. And here we go, just to flatten it. And the harder we push, the thinner that tortilla is going to be. I'm going to flip it around this way, do it again. Trying to make it just a little bit more even. Okay, now because this is paper, I can just slap this right on the griddle and gently pull it off. If I were using plastic, I could not do that, but I'll show you what we do when we use the plastic. And we cook it about under a minute on one side. And then we're going to flip it, and you can see that it's starting to look a little bit dry on this side. We'll let it cook about a minute on that side. And I'm going to get another one going. And they don't necessarily need to be browned. They just need to be cooked so they will hold together and not fall apart. Meanwhile, I am going to take this and show you how we can do this just with plastic. I'm going to cut the sealed edge off. All right, for this one we're going to use plastic. Okay, now this one is puffing a little bit, and actually we like to see that, so I'm going to flip it over. This one is almost done. And in the basket it goes. Now, because this one is thinner on one side than the other, I'm going to turn it to the other side and do it that way too. Try to even that out some. And we're going to pull the plastic off here. And then we're going to catch the bottom tail on the pan and then drop it right in like that. That one looks a little bigger than the other ones, which is fine. These are homemade. They're not going to be factory produced, so there's going to be individual differences. And you know you've done your dough right when it sticks together like this. Okay, last one going in. So here we have our basket of tortillas. Ow, hot, hot. But they're not done yet. We need to let them sit for about another 15 minutes so that the steam can penetrate all of them and make them nice and pliable. And this is another trick that some people don't know, but don't serve these right the minute you take them off. Let them sit for just a little bit. They're better if you do. So we'll be back in just a few minutes. Our tortillas have been here for about 12 minutes. I can tell that the towels are cooling down. So let's check to see what we have. It's plenty warm in here. So now notice how wonderful and pliable these are. So you could now take these and make them into tacos. You could roll them into flautas. You could make enchiladas or enchilada casserole. But what we're going to do is I'm going to show you the next step and these are now stable. You could not bend them like this if they were raw. So they have to be cooked to give them the pliable and the stick-to-itiveness that happens when you put them on a greaseless pan and cook them. There was no oil, no anything on that griddle. So it was just the heat that did this to these tortillas. So we're going to move over to the stove. Before we do that, I want to show you what a quick meal is like with these tortillas. Now we're going to do tostadas for lunch, but the way we do tostadas may not be the way that you do them. I use 1 pint of my home canned hamburger and 1 pint of home canned beans. And these are pinto beans, but I could also use my triple bean mix on this. And then I just put these two in a pan with some taco seasoning and some salt, and let them cook and boil for about 10 or 15 minutes and boil some of the liquid down until they're just the right consistency. Now we'll show you what that looks like, and we'll plate up a tostada when we come back after we have done these. Now I'm going to do probably about 2 to show you how the tostadas look, and then we'll take a couple of the tortillas and cut them into chips. So come on over to the stove. Notice that I'm using just a very small frying pan, and I have it up pretty high right now. I want the oil to get fairly hot, but I don't want to burn anything, so I'm going to turn it's heating up fast. I'm going to turn it to about right there. And the reason that I use a small pan is so that I can use less oil. You have to put less oil in a small pan to make it deep enough. So there's about 1/4 inch of oil in there. I don't need a huge amount of oil. And so I just put the edge in, and if the edge starts to sizzle a little bit, if you can see the bubbles there, so that oil is ready. And I'm just going to slip that tortilla right in there. So that's perfect. Now if we're lucky, it's going to puff up here when I turn it. And so frying these, the length that I'm going to do it, makes them crunchy, which is what we want in tostadas. So I'm going to flip it over. And there it goes, puffing right up. Doesn't that look great? And you can hear that it's now hard. So this is ready. It is perfect for tostadas. And I have some toweling over here all ready to drain it on. All right, we're going to put another one in. And it is browning. You can see that it's a different color, and especially after, and you can see that our hole right there has let all that steam out, so that's good. Now, while that oil reheats, I'm going to take 2 tortillas right here, the fresh ones, and I'm going to just cut them with this pizza cutter into 6 triangles. Now these are not going to taste anything like Doritos, thank goodness. These are really, really wonderful. And then you just slip the chips right in there just like they were tortillas. And this little pan does about 6 at a time. And it goes pretty fast. And when they get to the desired goldenness, brownness, then you just pull them out. And I just continually turn them. I don't want them to get too brown on one side. All right, these are about ready. Look how gorgeous. And then we'll put our last 6 in. And while these chips are cooling, we want to lightly salt them. And we're ready for the foundation for our meal. So let's go back over here. All right, we have then the foundation for a lovely tostada lunch. And so I've got 2 of these tostada tortillas on the plate. And here is the heated up beans and hamburger right out of our jars with a little bit of taco seasoning. And that is the consistency that it comes out to. So that's about perfect. Going to put on some cheese so it melts right over the beans and the hamburger. And then these are the last of our homegrown tomatoes. And then Jim will open a jar of salsa. And we have the chips all ready to go. So here is lunch for him. And that's how you do tortillas and tortilla chips. Now these are corn tortillas. So knowing how to do tortillas is an important skill if you like Mexican food and if you want to have something pretty easy to do in times of being either in lockdown for a pandemic or if we have to rely on our food storage. So thank you for being with us, and we'll see you at our next video.